the clash between welfarism and vegan abolitionism.
Exactly. If welfarism advances, it actually perpetuates exploitation.
Wait, how? How does less suffering equal more exploitation?
Well, the mechanism here is entirely psychological. Welfarism makes the general public feel comfortable with what they view as, quote-unquote, humane use.
I see.
Right, so if the public believes an animal lived a comfortable life and didn't suffer, they feel much better about consuming that animal or using it as a resource.
So the exploitation doesn't stop. It just gets like a better public relations campaign.
Exactly. It sanitizes the whole process.
Imagine you are kidnapped and held captive in a basement. Obviously, you prefer not to be tortured while you are down there. You want a comfortable bed and 3 meals a day.
Sure, any sane person would.
If you were that captive, you wouldn't want activists on the outside campaigning for torture-free kidnappings.
Right, you wouldn't want the legal system to pass a law saying kidnapping is now perfectly legal provided the captive has a comfortable mattress.
No. You want them to abolish the institution of kidnapping entirely.
Exactly. Normalizing a humane kidnapping just ensures that society accepts the practice, meaning more people will be kidnapped in the future.
Okay, let's unpack this with another analogy. Welfarism is like treating the symptoms of a disease with a painkiller.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Right. Because the painkiller works so well, the patient stops complaining. But that actually allows the underlying disease to spread silently because the alarm bells are turned off.
The original concept of veganism was specifically created as a historical recognition that centuries of welfarism had completely failed to end animal exploitation.
Centuries?
Yeah. The founders of veganism looked at history and realized that making exploitation slightly more comfortable didn't dismantle the system. It entrenched it.
But wait, if welfarism is such an obvious historically proven trap, why are lifelong activists falling right into it?
That's the big question.
I mean, these are people who dedicate their entire lives to ending animal exploitation. Why are influencers advocating for it?
According to the source, this happens because of the dangerous, slippery ambiguity of the term animal rights. Veganism has a fixed historical definition created by its founders.
Right. There are original documents you can point to.
Exactly. But animal rights has no historical anchor whatsoever.
It's just nebulous.
Completely nebulous. It's an umbrella term that means whatever the person speaking wants it to mean in that moment.
Gary Francione, Tom Regan, Peter Singer, Richard Ryder, David Pierce, Melanie Joy, Tobias Lehnert, and the authors of Zoopolis.
It is a lot of academics.
It is. So rather than just dropping all those names, let's actually unpack the mechanics of what these different people believe.
Good idea.
Because it proves this point about how chaotic this movement is. Let's start with Gary Francione.
Right. So Gary Francione is perhaps the most rigid of the theorists mentioned. His framework is built on sentience and what are called negative rights.
Okay, for the listener, what exactly is a negative right?
A negative right is essentially the right to be left alone, the right not to have something done to you.
Okay, that makes sense.
Francione argues that all sentient beings have one fundamental negative right, the right not to be treated as human property, period.
So it's pretty black and white.
Very. Under his theory, you don't need to calculate who suffers, more or less. If you are using an animal as property, you are violating their fundamental right.
That sounds somewhat close to the baseline.
It does.
But then Peter Singer, who is widely considered one of the founding fathers of the modern animal movement, and his framework is entirely different.
Yeah, Singer operates on utilitarianism.
Right.
Utilitarianism is fundamentally a mathematical approach to morality. It isn't about rigid rules or unbreakable rights. It is about the calculus of suffering.
The math of suffering.
Exactly. A utilitarian looks at an action and asks, does this action decrease the overall amount of suffering in the world or increase the overall amount of happiness?
And if the math works out in favor of less suffering, the action is moral.
Yes.
Which means there are no unbreakable rules. It's a math equation.
Right.
To put this in perspective for you, the listener, traditionally the concept of a right is deontological.
Deontological, yeah.
Think of deontology like a massive brick wall. It is a hard, unbreakable rule. You do not cross it.
Right.
Francione's animals are not property is a brick wall. But Singer's utilitarianism is a math equation. It is entirely willing to break a few rules or smash a hole in that brick wall if the final score results in less overall suffering.
And that fundamental friction is trying to blend deontology and utilitarianism. It falls apart.
It just doesn't work.
No. He even mentions searching a website called utilitarianism.net
Okay.
and finding texts that explicitly claim utilitarianism can promote blending welfarism and animal rights.
Oh, wow.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, for an abolitionist, that is a massive red flag. It allows welfarism to creep back into the movement under the respectable-sounding banner of rights.
And just to show how fractured this gets, theorists like the authors of Zoopolis,
Oh.
they don't just stop at negative rights. They advocate for complex positive rights.
Right, which is a whole other ballgame.
Yeah. A positive right isn't just the right to be left alone, it's the right to be actively provided for.
Exactly.
They suggest creating a political framework where domesticated animals are treated as literal citizens of human society with civic duties and rights.
While wild animals are treated as sovereign nations that we must negotiate with.
It's wild when you lay it all out like that.
Are they advocating for a brick wall, a math equation, or animal citizenship?
The public has no idea.
None.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The bizarre, real-world outcomes that happen when this nebulous concept of rights is applied loosely.
Right, because this isn't just an abstract philosophical problem.
No. The speaker mentions utilitarians, who argue that because lions hunt and kill zebras, the lions are causing massive amounts of suffering,
Right.
thereby violating the rights of the zebras. So their logical, mathematical conclusion:
We should kill lions.
humans should intervene, police the African savanna, and eliminate predatory lions to protect the zebras.
When the framework is that loose and based purely on the calculus of suffering, you end up with absurd interventions.
Interventions that look nothing like the original goal of the movement.
Exactly.
And the source brings up another wild twist. People claiming that eating roadkill or eating animals that died naturally is completely fine.
Or wearing feathers that naturally fell off a bird.
Right, completely acceptable under animal rights. Why? Because the animal didn't suffer.
Since no suffering occurred, the math equation checks out, and no rights were violated.
A suffering-centric theory posing as rights. So you have one activist saying animal rights means we have to eradicate lions.
Yeah.
Another person saying it means we can eat roadkill.
Right.
It is absolute chaos.
It really is.
And this philosophical mess creates a massive real-world headache when activists actually try to talk to the public.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. They're basically browsing through decades of complex, contradictory academic literature, taking a little bit of Singer's suffering calculus here.
A little bit of Franciani's negative rights there.
Right, and stitching them together. It is like trying to build a functioning vehicle using parts from a tractor, a bicycle, and an airplane.
And then acting surprised when the engine explodes on the starting line.
Exactly.
These influencers are parading these blended ideas around without acknowledging that the foundational philosophers behind them fundamentally disagree with each other.
Yeah, that incompatible.
And more importantly, it makes the whole movement look confused to the outside observer. When a skeptical non-vegan hears this, they just hear shifting goalposts.
Right. If an activist says, animals have rights, but not those animals, because I picked a theory that excludes them.
What about the rights of a tick? What about the rights of intestinal parasites? Do dust mites have the same rights as a golden retriever?
It destroys the intellectual credibility of the message. So, what does this all mean? How does this resolve the mite dilemma?
Return to the original vegan founder's principle, ditching the messy animal rights label entirely.
Really? Just drop it.
Just drop it. Veganism simply states that animals are not resources to be exploited. It is a radically simple, easily memorized, easily broadcasted principle.
If that is the only rule, then the dust mite question completely evaporates. Nobody is farming dust mites.
Right. Bypasses the entire who suffers more debate completely.
You aren't forced to defend the citizenship of a deer or the positive rights of a flea. You just step out of the framework entirely.
Exactly. You just don't use either of them as a resource.
It is fascinating how a simple shift in vocabulary completely changes the battlefield.
It really does. The term animal rights fragments the movement.
Confuses the public.
And most dangerously, allows welfarism to creep back in disguised as progress. Right. This raises an important question about the role of academia versus practical activism. Relying on convoluted academic frameworks might actually be a disservice to practical systemic change.
When a message requires a philosophy degree to parse, when you have to explain deontology versus utilitarianism just to justify your stance, it loses its power to mobilize everyday people.
Exactly. But Animals are not resources is a message that cannot be easily misinterpreted.
Which brings this entire deep dive back around to you, the listener.
Right.
Even if you aren't engaged in animal advocacy or if you completely disagree with this premise, this critique is a masterclass in the importance of defined language.
It really forces us to look at any movement we support or any information we consume and ask critical questions.
Yeah. Are the terms we're using precise? Do they have a fixed meaning?
Or are they muddying the waters and enabling the very things we want to stop?
Because if we cannot agree on the basic definitions of the words we are using, it is functionally impossible to agree on the solution.
The dilution of a message is often the first step toward the defeat of that message.
And that brings us to our final thought for today. We started by exploring the friction between asking for better conditions versus demanding total abolition.
The comfort destroying the patient.
Exactly that. I want to leave you with something to mull over that pushes the painkiller analogy even further.
Okay.
If centuries of making systems more humane hasn't stopped the core exploitation, we have to look at the function of that comfort.
Right.
At what point does the pursuit of harm reduction actually become the ultimate tool of the oppressor?
Oh, wow.
Is it possible that the massive systems we fight against actually want us to advocate for slightly better welfare simply because it permanently soothes the conscience of the consumer?
Turning off the alarm bells.
Exactly. And ensuring the system itself survives forever.
It is a sobering, provocative question. It really challenges the very foundation of how we approach progress.
It is. Something to think about the next time you hear a buzzword that sounds just a little too comforting. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.